Ladies and gentlemen, it's 124th day of school-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine and ninth year of Russian-Ukrainian war. I'm Marie Shevchenko. On behalf of Media Center Ukraine, I welcome all the journalists covering our fight for freedom. With us, we have Vsevolod Chentsov, Head of Mission of Ukraine to the EU. Your Excellency, good day. Today, uh, Brussels is seeing a full working day after the historic summit where EU has granted the candidacy status for Ukraine. What has changed for your team and for Ukraine following this momentous decision? Greetings, Andriy. Indeed, this is the first working day, but we worked actively over the weekend in order to comprehend what is going to change and how to plan our future. From now on, the efforts will be two-pronged. Firstly, it's the compliance with the 7 steps recommended by the European Commission for our transition to the negotiating stage, which was supported by the European Council. And alongside will be ensuring compliance with the requirements stipulated in the association agreement, and that is harmonization of the Ukrainian laws with the EU requirements, because we will need to do that sooner or later as part of our accession to the EU, as part of the accession negotiations procedure. So our implementation of the agreement is fully consistent with the logic of our accession with the EU up to our full entry. Can you give us some details about the adoption of the decision on Ukraine on the eve of 23rd of June? Did you have any surprises? How did it go? Well, the massive effort to assure support to the decision recommended by the Commission went on all the way to the summit. And this was quite intense, a few months or weeks that culminated this drive. We had to persuade a number of countries that had their reservations, and the European Commission came out with the proposals knowing that the decision will be passable, offering the status of the candidate and stipulate the next steps, the implementation of a number of steps. Well, this didn't come as a surprise. It was quite expected to see the discussion about the Balkans. It was planned first after the adoption of the decision on Ukraine, and it so happens that some member countries decided to use the consensus that was shaping around the delivery of the candidacy status for Ukraine. So they decided to heighten the discussion about the Balkans so that this process could also be yielded some impetus. This is why the decision on Ukraine was somewhat delayed, but the discussion on the Ukrainian agenda was swift and was supported unanimously. Should there be questions in the audience, you're welcome. Natalia Staroprava, Media Center Ukraine. I have the following question. What is the definition? Ukrainian Vice Prime Minister is saying that Ukraine won't lose its candidacy status to the EU, but should Ukraine fail to meet a requirement, how will it affect our prospect for membership? Should we consider the wording of the European Commission proposals and the wording of the decision of the European Council? They clearly indicate that Ukraine has a number of objectives it has to meet before transitioning to the next stage. And second point is that the European Commission will take in a progress report before the European Council on the implementation of the steps. That's the first point. Second point, there's a general understanding of the situation Ukraine finds itself in. Even despite the war, we are implementing the reforms, including in the target areas defined by the European Commission. So the Istanbul Convention was ratified last week, the anti-corruption plan was approved, and for sure this was welcomed. Therefore, our objective is to comply with the suggested steps, make our way towards negotiations, and there is no threat that we'd be deprived of the status or the status be suspended. I would recommend our experts and our esteemed journalists to focus instead on the positive developments, and this is a massive positive decision for Ukraine, for sure, and follow and help implement the designated steps. We have another question. Clearly, the war had a sway on this candidacy procedure being expedited, but for these dramatic developments, would we have reached a candidacy status just as quickly? Thank you. I wouldn't like to make the speculations about our pace of development if the war hadn't broken out. The Russian aggression as a factor helped forge a monolith consensus amongst the EU member states, all the 27 members, and the path the countries take. It took the Balkan countries from 3 to 7 years to cover. Many of them are on the same page as we are now. And we have walked this path in 3 months. It's a record that is unprecedented. And it's a big sign of respect to us as a society, as a nation, and it is a manifestation of trust in us that we can walk the path despite the Russian aggression. The 7 vectors of reform outlined in the European Commission, what would you consider the most serious challenge for Ukraine? I would say all the steps outlined are feasible, are clear to us. The war is a factor that can hamper or delay the implementation of some particular steps, like the reform of the Ukrainian security service, the extended reform of the Ukrainian national police. Now we need to rather focus on fighting the crime, and the security service has an instrumental role to play in battling aggression, in foiling sabotage, doing counterintelligence, and this will need to be factored in. We will talk to our counterparts in Brussels to seek a constructive approach and for the efforts to be targeted at helping Ukraine implement and prepare reforms, even at times of war. The German ambassador to Ukraine, Anke van Hoosen, at a previous media center, Ukraine said that the reform of justice to her seems the most challenging reform that her country will be following with increased attention. Is this what you also hear in Brussels? We do hear that this is one of the key vectors, whether it's going to be the most challenging. I would rather focus on meeting the objectives set for us. We're not starting from scratch. There are a few steps we need to complete, They're obvious. For the Constitutional Court, it's the appointment of the judges, improvement of the legislation. As for justice, it's the appointment of the members of the Integrity Board and completion of the procedures that have already been initiated. The reason why Germany and other countries are paying a lot of attention is that as a part of our future reconstruction and our reform for the future, it's very important for the German and Dutch investors know how the money will be invested in Ukraine. And our last question, when did you, as a head of Ukraine mission to EU, feel that this decision was in the making? A few days before the summit, it was already clear that consensus was forging. A visit of the four leaders to Kiev was an important August sign. This was facilitated by the work done by the President of Ukraine and the government of Ukraine as they liaised with their counterparts to focus their attention. All countries received such attention, and the countries that had some skeptical reservations a few days before the summit, and I will not name the leaders now, you must have been following the developments. So these formerly skeptical countries have publicly pledged their support, and this was a no return point then. This was Vsevolod Chentsov, head of Ukraine mission to the EU. Thank you for talking to us. The next briefing is coming up at 1 hour. We will be talking to Andy Vitrenko, First Deputy Minister for Education and Science of Ukraine.